can't stand. This phrase used in various contexts to express a strong dislike or inability to tolerate something. Uses: dislike for activities or situations. Dislike for foods or tastes. Dislike for people's behaviors or characteristics. Physical discomfort or inability. Emotional or mental states. Sensory overload or preferences. Moral or ethical reasons. In expressions of exhaustion or frustration. Dislike for activities or situations. Examples: I can't stand waking up early. He can't stand watching horror movies. She can't stand waiting in long lines. They can't stand going to the dentist. I can't stand running in the heat. He can't stand doing the dishes. She can't stand studying late at night. We can't stand sitting in traffic jams. I can't stand listening to loud music. He can't stand wearing a tie. She can't stand shopping for hours. They can't stand cleaning the bathroom. I can't stand arguing about politics. He can't stand eating spicy food. She can't stand being stuck indoors. We can't stand doing laundry. I can't stand missing my favorite show. He can't stand getting up when it's dark outside. She can't stand wearing high heels. They can't stand being in hot, stuffy rooms. I can't stand having to repeat myself. He can't stand being interrupted. She can't stand working on weekends. We can't stand when people are rude. I can't stand forgetting my phone at home. Dislike for foods or tastes. Examples: I can't stand raw onions in my salad. She can't stand the texture of mushrooms. He can't stand eating anything with vinegar. They can't stand the sweetness of candy. I can't stand the bitterness of dark chocolate. She can't stand the smell of fish cooking. He can't stand the sourness of lemons. We can't stand drinking warm beer. I can't stand the crunchiness of celery. She can't stand the spiciness of chili peppers. He can't stand the taste of ginger in food. They can't stand the greasiness of fried food. I can't stand the sogginess of wet bread. She can't stand the flavor of anise. He can't stand eating overripe bananas. We can't stand the dryness of overcooked meat. I can't stand the taste of diet sodas. She can't stand the texture of oatmeal. He can't stand the aroma of garlic. They can't stand the taste of coconut. I can't stand the chewiness of tough steak. She can't stand the flavor of blue cheese. He can't stand drinking sour milk. We can't stand eating burnt popcorn. I can't stand the taste of artificial sweeteners. Dislike for people's behaviors or characteristics. Examples: I can't stand when people talk loudly in public. He can't stand people who are always complaining. She can't stand being around selfish people. We can't stand those who don't listen to others. I can't stand people who interrupt when you're speaking. He can't stand individuals who are rude to waiters. She can't stand people who don't say, "Thank you." I can't stand when someone is dishonest with me. He can't stand people who chew with their mouth open. She can't stand those who are always on their phones. We can't stand people who spread rumors. I can't stand someone who is always negative. He can't stand people who are too controlling. She can't stand when people don't respect personal space. I can't stand individuals who are always late. He can't stand people who don't clean up after themselves. She can't stand those who talk during movies. We can't stand people who are not punctual. I can't stand someone who always has to be right. He can't stand people who brag about themselves. She can't stand individuals who are not empathetic. I can't stand people who don't take responsibility for their actions. He can't stand those who criticize others unfairly. She can't stand people who are judgmental. We can't stand individuals who don't help others. Physical discomfort or inability. Examples. I can't stand tight shoes. They hurt my feet. She can't stand loud noises. They give her a headache. He can't stand bright lights. They hurt his eyes. They can't stand heavy backpacks. It strains their backs. I can't stand sitting all day. It makes my back sore. She can't stand the smell of perfume. It makes her nauseous. He can't stand wearing wool. It makes his skin itch. I can't stand humidity. It makes it hard to breathe. She can't stand the heat. It makes her feel faint. He can't stand air conditioning. It makes him feel cold. I can't stand scratchy fabrics. They irritate my skin. She can't stand long walks. Her legs get tired. He can't stand spicy food. It upsets his stomach. They can't stand the sound of chalk on a board. It gives them chills. I can't stand getting wet in the rain. I always catch a cold. She can't stand high altitudes. She feels dizzy. He can't stand tight collars. They make him feel choked. I can't stand the smell of smoke. It makes me cough. She can't stand sleeping on hard mattresses. Her back hurts. He can't stand standing still for too long. His legs cramp. I can't stand the glare of snow. It blinds me. She can't stand strong winds. They make her eyes water. He can't stand caffeine. It makes him jittery. They can't stand the feeling of sand on their skin. It's too scratchy. I can't stand wearing hats. They make my head itch. Emotional or mental states. Examples. I can't stand feeling anxious all the time. She can't stand being ignored by her friends. He can't stand the pressure of deadlines. They can't stand the sadness of goodbyes. I can't stand feeling helpless in situations. She can't stand the uncertainty of the future. He can't stand being overwhelmed with work. I can't stand the frustration of failing. She can't stand the jealousy when others succeed. He can't stand the guilt of making mistakes. They can't stand the anger that comes with injustice. I can't stand the loneliness of living alone. She can't stand the fear of the unknown. He can't stand the disappointment of canceled plans. I can't stand the stress of financial worries. She can't stand feeling unappreciated. He can't stand the embarrassment of public speaking. They can't stand the boredom of routine. I can't stand the anxiety of waiting for news. She can't stand feeling insecure about her looks. He can't stand the nervousness before a performance. I can't stand the panic of getting lost. She can't stand the grief of losing a loved one. He can't stand the dread of doctor's visits. They can't stand the tension in arguments. Sensory overload or preferences. Examples. I can't stand the brightness of fluorescent lights. He can't stand the feel of cotton balls. She can't stand the taste of licorice. They can't stand the sound of a vacuum cleaner. I can't stand the smell of burnt food. He can't stand the texture of velvet. She can't stand the sight of blood. I can't stand the sound of people chewing. He can't stand the smell of wet paint. She can't stand the feel of chalk on her fingers. They can't stand the taste of raw tomatoes. I can't stand the brightness of direct sunlight. She can't stand the sound of sirens. He can't stand the smell of strong perfume. I can't stand the texture of slimy foods. They can't stand the sight of clutter. She can't stand the taste of overly sweet candy. He can't stand the sound of fingernails tapping. I can't stand the smell of old books. She can't stand the feel of synthetic fabrics. He can't stand the brightness of camera flashes. I can't stand the sound of snoring. They can't stand the smell of cooking onions. She can't stand the texture of cooked mushrooms. He can't stand the taste of bitter coffee. Moral or ethical reasons. Examples. I can't stand when people lie to get ahead. He can't stand businesses that exploit workers. She can't stand when animals are treated cruelly. They can't stand corruption in politics. I can't stand the idea of cheating in exams. She can't stand when people don't recycle. He can't stand discrimination of any kind. We can't stand when the wealthy dodge their responsibilities. I can't stand when people bully others. She can't stand the destruction of natural habitats. He can't stand when justice is not served. They can't stand and individuals are marginalized. I can't stand the misuse of power by authorities. She can't stand when people ignore human rights. He can't stand when the environment is polluted needlessly. We can't stand when people are dishonest in relationships. I can't stand when public funds are misused. She can't stand when the media spreads lies. He can't stand when there's unfair treatment at work. They can't stand when someone takes credit for others' work. I can't stand when people waste food. She can't stand when laws protect the guilty. He can't stand the thought of child labor. We can't stand when people are silenced for speaking out. I can't stand when communities are divided for political gain. In expressions of exhaustion or frustration. Examples. I can't stand these endless meetings. They drain me. He can't stand doing overtime every weekend. She can't stand the noise from the construction site. They can't stand the slow internet connection at the office. I can't stand the clutter in my house. It's overwhelming. She can't stand her broken phone screen. It's irritating. He can't stand the long commute. It's exhausting. We can't stand the leaky faucet. It's driving us crazy. I can't stand when my emails go unanswered. She can't stand the lack of communication in her team. He can't stand redoing work because of others' mistakes. They can't stand the constant changes in plans. I can't stand waiting for approvals. It slows everything down. She can't stand the office politics. It's frustrating. He can't stand the pile of laundry waiting for him. We can't stand the unpredictability of the weather. I can't stand being stuck indoors all day. She can't stand when her routine is disrupted. He can't stand the feeling of being unproductive. They can't stand when technology fails at crucial moments. I can't stand the pressure to always be perfect. She can't stand the messiness of shared spaces. He can't stand the constant barking of the neighbor's dog. We can't stand the never-ending household chores. I can't stand when plans get canceled last minute.